Welcome back to the video, guys, or welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to go ahead and preface the video with this little thing because I've been making videos somewhat consistently for over a year at this point, and I never talked about why I started my YouTube channel and what my whole purpose for it is. So in addition to me nerding out about stuff that I just really enjoy, so whether that is primarily anime related stuff, my center's movie review and stuff like that, anything that catches my interest and I just want to yap about, because I will yap for sure. It just gives me a space to talk about that. But that is something that I kind of do secondarily. My main reason that I made my YouTube channel is because I'm sure, like most people, when COVID was still at its peak and jobs were getting dropped left and right, people had to start working remote. So a lot of people were looking to the tech realm. And by the time that I had wrapped up or was getting close to wrapping up my master's in IT management, I also was making that move to tech when I was down in Dallas. So there were a lot of things that I had to learn on the fly that, people who already knew they wanted to go into something STEM related, that like one of my own boys who's an engineer and, just different scientists, different types of sciences. There were a lot of things that I kind of checked myself out of growing up because either that technical skill or the concepts, the way you look at them in movies and media, especially if you look at hackers and stuff, it just looked very convoluted. And it was like, yeah, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be staring at a Linux terminal for 8+ hours a day and looking at green letters on a black screen. I'm not going to be doing that. So there were a lot of things that I had to learn, or things that I actually gained interest in, that I just checked myself out of immediately and assumed I wasn't going to be good enough to do it, until the big tech boom happened. And I was like, not only do I have to make this move, and I've kind of assigned myself to make a pivot into IT, but I actually found out there were parts of it I enjoy. Hence, my current job, where I'm more on the operations side, and I have different accounts that I'm assigned to and responsible for to make sure that operation stays afloat. I actually found that I like that side of the tech space or the IT space, where I use a lot of different concepts to do my job. And depending on our meetings with our clients, we may have to address certain things, data points that we use for data that's reported to us. And that helps with resolving cases and our governance meetings and stuff like that, where certain things will get brought up, different firmware, hardware, and software issues that I no longer have to put my hands on, because I'm no longer in a call center environment where I'm the foot soldier. I'm at the bottom level that has to resolve these issues and send out credentials and stuff like that. Now I'm at a point where I have a key contact where I communicate with them, I get what I need, or maybe I get them to retrieve something for me on my behalf. Excuse me, to retrieve something on my behalf. They give it to me, I give it to whoever I need to give it to, and we get these cases moving so that their operations stay afloat. All that to say, I started doing this when it comes to the tech stuff, and I still do it because it helps me learn stuff that maybe I don't have to touch on a day-to-day basis, stuff that does not align with my job, or maybe does align with my job. And even though I'm not the technician that we send out, I'm someone that still needs to understand what this stuff means, because I may be able to better participate in certain conversations, with my management and people to my left and right, that, makes solving these cases much easier. It made me aware, that tech boom, it made me find out I wasn't the only one that, of course, was trying to make the move, but also was not the only one that found there are sections in the tech universe, really, that we like, but we all assume the same thing, that it looks one way. And you can do certain jobs that are kind of like my job, that's non-technical and anything, but you may be able to get paid more just, maybe as an engineer, but you'll be doing my job, but the engineer title pays for itself and stuff like that. So the more I do this, I'm kind of in a form testing myself and quizzing myself and making myself better for my job, as well as just for the information, because I find that I like this stuff. And I like to draw different, comparisons to stuff that I think people are more likely to understand, because even today's subject, when we go over some of the definitions and stuff that we're going to touch on, at face value, you're not going to understand probably what too much of this means. I know I had a hard time. So what I've learned is to translate some of this information in a way that makes sense to me. And I decided to just share that with y'all for those who are looking to pivot into the tech world or are already there. Maybe you're trying to pivot to another section of it. You know, you're trying to get certifications, Security Plus, and the whole CompTIA trifecta, cloud certs, and stuff like that. And, you know, basically help y'all by helping myself. So all that to say, I appreciate y'all for those who have been consistently watching, people who give feedback on primarily the tech videos, stuff like that, where, you know, I like to just see how do we translate this information when you read it on a black and white page and some of the definitions seem redundant. You're noticing certain concepts have like overlaps and it's like, how is this different from this? And some of the jargon can just be overwhelming. So it's nice to be able to illustrate it in a way that makes sense to nerds like us. So no further ado, let's go ahead and get started with today's subject. Today's subject is going to be about one of the, I would say, core ideas of primarily the IT realm, the IT world, when it comes to computer networking and stuff like that. If you work in a technical space, if you've handled incidents and like ticketing systems and stuff like that, then this is probably going to be a key concept that whether you're in school or you're already working in it, that you have heard of and probably some more than others utilize it on a regular basis. And that's going to be the OSI model. The OSI model is a framework that's meant to kind of describe and to a degree illustrate how data moves from one place to another, whether it's you sending a text message to a friend and you're in California, but I'm here on the East Coast, emails, same thing, you know, different forms of communication from as local as within your own household to, you know, across to the different side of the planet. And there are 7 layers. There are 7 layers that we're going to touch on. And I'm just going to start off by reading the different layers in their descriptions. One that I found that is closely aligned to, you know, the way I learned it. But then we're going to try to illustrate this in a way that may make a bit more sense, you know, just so that's easier to understand for those who need to know or just want to know. So I'm going to put the picture up here of the OSI model. Now, if you go into Google Images or whatever search engine you use, the descriptions may be a bit different depending on the source, but this one I like the most. So starting from the bottom, you have the physical layer, which is pretty much the start of the whole process, depending on how you look at it. And the physical layer says it encodes signals, cabling connectors, physical specifications. And we're just going to keep working our way up before I start, you know, getting to my like illustration of these concepts to make them easier. So from physical, we go to the data link layer, assigns local addresses to interfaces, delivers information locally, MAC method. Network assigns global addresses to interfaces and determines the best routes through different networks. Transport transmits the data using transmission protocols, including TCP and UDP. The 5th layer is the session layer, establishes, manages, and terminates sessions between end nodes. Presentation encrypts, encodes, and compresses usable data. And finally, the application layer, the closest layer to the user, which provides application services. And out of all of those, I wouldn't be surprised if the main one that you guys will be able to understand right away is layer 7, because it says it's the one that we interact with the most and provides the services that an application is meant to provide. So I can already tell you that's going to be your Instagram, the way you see it on your feed, your TikToks, your X/Twitter, the YouTubes of the world, all that stuff. What you see when you interact with it is the application layer. Now, everything below that, that's probably what we're going to have a bit more fun talking about. So I'm going to try not to make this too long. So let's just jump right into it. All right. So to go and get this started, we're going to introduce in this case, the anime that I'm going to use to illustrate this, because I think it'll make it that much easier to understand. And one little detail about the OSI model, if I haven't mentioned it already, is not only does it help illustrate and give an idea of how data moves from one place to another, but it's also, because for that reason, it's very important when it comes to troubleshooting. So if someone hits you up and says, I'm having an issue with my Wi-Fi network, depending on what error message that they are getting, if you have a good idea of the OSI model, you will pretty much be able to determine at least what 1 or 2 layers that the issue lies in, and therefore it makes it that much easier to resolve the whole thing. So the example I want to go with this time, there's a few, but I ended up going with Pokemon. Personally, I think Pokemon is a very simple, illustration to use for this concept. Personally, I think it's perfect. It's right on the nose. And when I start going step by step in the OSI model, you'll see why I think that. So starting with the physical layer is all about the physical means of communication that you're going to use to move data from one place to another. So this can be your Wi-Fi networks, but this also can be any physical cables or connections that you're making. So whether you're using Wi-Fi to connect your PlayStation to your home Wi-Fi, or if you choose to use an Ethernet cable, either way, those both fall under layer 1. Now, how does this translate to Pokemon? So let's kind of get this out the way first. For those who don't know, and I'm not sure how many of y'all that will be, but Pokemon, the key detail of it, it's used literally throughout its entire series, at least in the series that Ash Ketchum is in, who has essentially been retired as the main character of Pokemon at this point. But his entire time as the main character, there was multiple things that were in common every single time, no matter what region or country he went to. And one of those things is that whenever he traveled, when he either stayed in his home region, which was the very first Pokemon series, or whenever he would travel to another region, 9 times out of 10, he and his friends that were traveling with him were walking. But sometimes you would see them in a truck. When he went to the Kalos region, he was on a plane. I think that was more or less the first time we saw planes in the show, or at the very least with him being on a plane, ships, stuff like that. That is the physical layer. The physical layer is all about the physical way that you're going to travel. What mode of transportation are we using? So even on a smaller scale, like in a neighborhood, are you using a bike? Are you using like a moped? Are you using your actual car, using a truck, using a van, stuff like that? That is layer 1, pretty plain and simple. It answers the question, what form of transportation are we going to use to get around, basically? Now, the data link layer, I'm going to dumb a lot of these down, so I'm probably going to piss some people off, and I'm fine with it. But the data link layer is basically communication within a local area, which the best example of this is your home network. So your home Wi-Fi, any data that is moving within that household, that's pretty much the whole point of the data link layer. It's meant to move data, but within a very confined and limited space. So, for example, if you have a sibling that you also live with, or a couple of them, and y'all the type of siblings that will be just a couple rooms away from each other, but y'all be texting each other back and forth, then it doesn't need an IP address in order for the data to move. Like if both y'all are connected to the Wi-Fi, the data doesn't need like an IP address to go anywhere because y'all are right there in the same house attached to the same network. There's no point of the data traversing like the whole World Wide Web. There's no point because both y'all are right there. Now, the Pokemon side of this would be if Ash had like a job to do, or if he was trying to deliver a package, but if he had to deliver a package within Pallet Town, which is his hometown in the whole series, but he doesn't have to go to another city, is just in Pallet Town, then he doesn't have to get, like, for example, the zip code or just certain details and things of where the package needs to go. Like, he knows his city, he knows his town. So he doesn't need to take as long to get there. There are certain details in terms of like, which the next layer is going to cover, but you don't need to potentially fly the package there. It's not necessary. It's like 2 houses down, maybe the other side of town, very small and easy. But the network layer, layer 3, that's where the picture gets bigger, because layer 3 is basically the same as layer 2, but on a bigger scale. So in layer 2 and 3, in both cases, just like actual data, the data is like a package that needs to be delivered from one place to another. But layer 2 is more like if you're delivering a package within the same city or town that you live in, and it's very local. You don't have to look far. Versus layer 3, this is like me being from Cali, if I'm from Cali, but my mom, let's say back when she was in the military, she would be stationed in Kuwait, Japan, Bahrain, stuff like that. She would be stationed in some of these places. So if I was back in California, or even when I lived in Maryland for a time, I would have to get certain types of global information that would allow the package to reach her successfully, especially like military based information as well. So it's the same concept of trying to deliver a package but on a bigger scale. And that's where in computer terms, you need more than the MAC address to do that. Because the MAC address is something that is attached to the device itself. Like every computer, every phone, anything that can be connected to a Wi-Fi network or a computer network has a MAC address. But a MAC address, in this case, is kind of like the specific address or a location, like say a room and within a house. An IP address will tell you which house to deliver a package, primarily from afar. So again, whether you're crossing state lines, country lines, the different side of the planet, if it's bigger than your immediate vicinity, you need an IP address because we're going to have to stop by a bunch of different places before we can get this package ultimately to where it needs to go. In my example, California/Maryland to Japan, Bahrain, or wherever my mom is stationed, right? So in terms of Pokemon, it's the same thing. Like if Ash had to make a package or had to drop off a package and make a delivery, but instead of him being based in Pallet Town, let's say he had to go to, it's in the same country, but it's in a different city. So let's say instead of him having to drop a package off within Pallet Town, he would have to go, which is pretty much the whole point of the series. He would have to go to the Indigo Plateau, or he would have to go, I think Johto is the Silver Conference, and all the different conferences within different countries. He would have to get more information because he has further to go and he's leaving his immediate area. He's not just dealing with a neighbor that's a few houses down. He's dealing with someone that is much further away and is going to be a journey to get there. But essentially, the main difference between layer 2 and layer 3 is just scale. Like, how far do we have to go? That's the main difference. Layer 4 is the transport layer. And this basically, you can kind of see this as reliability because it mentions in the definition, you're transmitting data or shipping a package using transmission protocols, including TCP and UDP. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of what those things are. I believe I made a video about those already, but if I haven't, I probably will in the future. But the main details between TCP and UDP is that TCP is reliable while UDP is not. TCP will make sure that the package gets to where it needs to go. UDP will be like, we'll try to get it there, but if it don't make it, it's not necessarily our fault. Too bad, And in Pokemon, this is kind of like if you have a Pokemon egg, because I know this has happened multiple times in the show. If he has a Pokemon egg that he has to deliver, or like a parcel, like in the games, it's very common for there to be a parcel they have to deliver to like your rival or something. But let's say you have Ash that's like jogging his way there. He's looking for the person or where they live. He wants to hand it to him in person and make sure like this person got the package that they needed to get. They got the Pokemon egg that's about to hatch. They got the parcel that in the games, his mom wanted to drop off to you and you got something extra. He wants to make sure of that, and he wants to do it timely so that, there's no lag. Versus UDP, that example would be he may have to go to an island, like I believe in Hoenn region. It's the fighting type gym leader. I don't think it's a Brawly or not Broly, but the fighting type gym leader in the Hoenn region in Gen 3. His gym is on a secluded island in that region. So you have to like swim or use a Pokemon with surf to reach him, stuff like that. And let's say he's like on his way there, but let's say Ash still has his Lapras, so he can swim there. He can use his Lapras to get to the island, but he makes like a bunch of pit stops along the way. He ends up being 2-3 days late, or even Team Rocket kind of throws him off and throws the schedule off course. That's the main thing there. We're trying to figure out, well, you kind of know where the package needs to go, but now are we going to make sure it's a reliable transportation, like a reliable trip, and it's going to get where it needs to go, it's going to get in the hands of whoever it needs to reach? Or are we going to say, hey, take this package, get it there, but we can't guarantee it's going to get there like on time and stuff like that. But basically, layer 4 is all about the actual movement and reliability of getting a package or data from one place to another. Layer 5 establishes, manages, and terminates sessions between end nodes. So in Pokemon terms, at least in the first series, because no other series ever brings this up. And this runs into the whole running gag of Ash being eternally 10 years old, but in reality, he should be like in his early 20s by now, at least. But at least in the Kanto region, in the Indigo League, Ash, for him to traverse and to travel around the entire Kanto region took him 1 year. The narrator said that when he got back to Palatown after the Indigo League, he got back home, a year had passed. So technically he was 11 years old. And that whole year, that whole trip of the goal, which is to get all the 8 badges and then get to the Indigo League and hopefully become champion, which of course he didn't, but even just to make that whole run around, like he went from Palatown, he went to Viridian City. It was too soon. He went to Pewter City, ran into Brock. After that, he ran to Misty. He made all his way around the other gyms, circled his way all the way back around to Viridian City. Then he had to go to the Indigo Plateau, all that stuff. That all took 1 year. And that whole process, that 1 year counts as a session. From beginning of the journey to the end of that journey on a regional level, at least, not the Pokemon Master thing, but at least on a regional level, that was a session that lasted for a year. Now, in real life, no computer-based session should ever last a year. That's a whole security issue. But, in the world of Pokemon, that's okay. That makes sense. And so session 5 is all about establishing a session from beginning to end, from origin to destination. What place are you flying out of? What place are you ultimately landing in? That concept. And how long should it take to get there? And once that trip is done, the session terminates and everything's done. And nothing else will be done past that point until we need to reconnect and do it all over again, either for the exact same job or for a different job. But that's basically all that is. It's how long does it take for us to get this package from point A to point B? And once that trip is done, cut it. We don't need it no more. Layer 6 is the presentation layer. And this one's pretty easy because in the world of Pokemon, every region, so far at least, has gym badges with the exception of the Alola region, I believe, because they had their inaugural Pokemon League, but they're not at the same levels like Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Sinnoh. They're not there yet. So they have like their version of badges, but not quite. But every other region has an official Pokemon League that's been established. They've been around for a while. And so they all have gym badges that people who want to join their regional championship league, they all have badges that everyone has to get to be validated so that when they get to whatever conference, when that time comes, they show whatever badges they have and they'll be like, okay, cool, these are legit. You're in and now you can compete, right? The thing is, Kanto gym badges, for example, cannot be used in Johto. Hoenn gym badges cannot be used in Sinnoh. So this is where another trope is that Ash does the same thing in every region every single time. The only Pokemon he keeps consistent is Pikachu, but other than that, just like his gym badges, he starts his team from scratch. He starts completely from zero in every region because the way he operates is whatever I did in past regions, I can't bring over here. I got to start from scratch and build back up from ground zero. And that is an example of the presentation layer because the presentation layer is all about taking, like, say a package again, because this networking is very much like package from buyer to send, that whole process. With the presentation layer, like if you had an actual package and you place an order online, let's say it's Amazon, just using an example, and they can, of course, get you your package, but let's say you have a package that, like, the location, the nearest Amazon warehouse doesn't have what you're looking for, but maybe one in a few states over does. What they may do is bring that package in, like they'll ship that package from whatever warehouse that has it. They'll ship it to the nearest warehouse or facility that's in your area. They'll organize it, stack stuff wherever they need to stack it. They'll load it into their trucks and then they'll send it out so that it can reach you on the end. But the thing with warehouses, because I've worked in a warehouse environment, more or less no warehouse is exactly the same as another one, even within the same company, like under the same company. Because you have some warehouses that they do the same stuff, but the layout is different because the location is different. So they got to organize things differently. You also have some warehouses that have a specific use that is like very limited. So you may have two warehouses that belong to the same company, but they don't do two of the same things. One has a specific focus, whereas another one may be more generalized. So all these details play a role in that when your order makes it to your local warehouse, they have to kind of reorganize things in a way that makes sense to them, because however they organized it somewhere else might not fly where they at. You know what I mean? But again, to the Pokemon example, that also works. Because again, you can't take badges from like one region, which in the world of Pokemon, a region is basically a country. So you can't take things from one country to another and say, well, I got, I proved my skills in America. I should be able to compete in like Italy football, for example, or soccer as we Americans know it. I'm validated in American football. I'm validated when it comes to like Spain football club or different sports clubs. So if you go to another country, they should be willing to accept you all the way. They don't necessarily have to do that. They might, but chances are they're not going to, because you have not proven yourself to their standard. Their standard and the way they do things is different. So hence, again, in Pokemon, every single region or country that Ash went to, he didn't take badges from another region and say, I beat the Elite Four or I beat the Battle Frontier. My skills are valid. You got to let me in. No, they don't. You haven't proven yourself to their standard. So now you have to meet the way they do things and get the stuff that makes sense to them, get the badges that fits them. And then they'll say, okay, cool, you've proven yourself. Now you can go and compete in the championship stuff. And as we've already said, layer 7, the application layer, it's whatever app is on your screen. That's it. That's everything else below layer 7 is stuff that typically a regular person doesn't see. But layer 7 in the Pokemon world is essentially like whatever regional or country conference that is. So for Kantos, the Indigo League, again, Johto, the Silver Conference, stuff like that. It's whatever like people can kind of come around. Even the what's it called that made him the World Monarch, like the World Pokemon Championship, that whole thing. Whatever people can spectate, that is what applies as layer 7. You know what I'm saying? Like the most just casual thing that a regular everyday person can see. But the regular everyday person is not going to see how often Ash trained, the Pokemon he gave up, the Pokemon he caught, the losses at gym battles and stuff in between, stuff like that. The regular everyday person is not going to see that. But the regular everyday person can see him compete in the regional championship when that time comes. So I think that works. Hopefully I didn't throw the metaphor off, because I also threw some other stuff in there. But I really believe that Pokemon is a perfect example of the OSI model, from Ash's entire regional journey, how that correlates to being a session in computer terms, the physical connection, so the way that he travels. So sometimes he and his friends are on trucks, cars, ships, small boats, even using Lapras as a form of transportation. You know what I'm saying? Just the way you get around, especially the presentation layer. Hopefully I didn't butcher it, because that is actually my favorite connection to make, is that the presentation layer in Pokemon is the whole gym badge thing. And, I guess I can assume you got the skills because you got 8 badges from whatever region, but we're a whole different group over here. So we got to validate you by our standards. Their standards aren't the same as ours. So you got to play by our rules. You know what I mean? That was my favorite layer to like make that connection on. And this is something that for the OSI model, I tried to study multiple times and I just had a hard time getting it. No matter what resource I used, no matter what pictures I used, stuff like that, it was just a pain to figure out. So once I finally made that connection and translated the information in a way that made sense to me, I was like, okay, I think this might be helpful. Because even my mom's, she had to learn about the OSI model when she was back in the service. She's out now. But she told me they had like acronyms that they would use for the first letter of every layer. I don't even remember what acronym she gave me. I don't know if it had something about pizza or something in it. I don't remember. You know what I mean? Like it was just different. But this, for the nerd mindset, this makes sense. So whether it's Pokemon, whether it's something else, I'm open to hearing like anyone else. Have you translated this information like this in a way that makes sense to you? Do you see any overlaps with a different anime, any of the big 3 or even some more obscure ones that I might not know about? I might know about stuff like that. But yeah, man, this one was fun. This was a fun one to kind of like research and draw those connections. So hopefully that was helpful to you guys. It definitely was helpful to me because the minute I made that connection, I was running back scenarios in my head that I dealt with at work, or, you know, just hypothetical stuff that I've read about online. And I was instantly, once I made those connections and ran them through like a Pokemon type of lens, that's when I was like, okay, I can kind of gauge, oh, this might be a layer 3 or 4 issue, or a layer 2, 3 issue, stuff like that. So yeah, definitely helped me a lot, and hopefully helped you guys a lot. I'll go ahead and leave this video off here, guys. If you have any feedback, comments, anything like that, share that with me in the comment section below. If this was helpful, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I would appreciate that. And feel free to let me know if there's anything else you want me to tackle, any technical concepts that you want me to tackle, try to translate. And like I said, I actually will be going back to school, and I'll be diving into more tech concepts later, probably for that, because I'm gonna have to learn that stuff. So yeah, I'll have more to rant about, but I'll also keep making other like nerd videos, anime related stuff, maybe some like comic related stuff, DCEU or DCU, MCU, stuff like that. Cause I like to make this like personal and fun as well, like just nerd out. So yeah, guys, go ahead and leave that for me in the comment section below. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you liked it, if it was helpful and everything. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.